like to welcome everybody to another edition of the Major Music Lounge podcast, joined by Sammy Loco from the Sammy Loco Podcast. And we've been kind of going back and forth for, a while now, trying to, get this interview in and finally made it happen. So, definitely glad to have you on the show. How's it going with you?
It's been pretty good. This is Sammy Loco.
All
Yeah, it's
right.
been pretty good. I'm pretty glad to be on here. Appreciate the setup and everything you had in the background.
Oh man, no problem, man. Yeah, I gotta keep my Raiders in there and the flashing lights when I'm making beats back here, man. So yeah. So tell us a little bit about, who is Sammy Loco? Like I noticed you got the podcast and we're gonna get into that, but uh I guess to start off, like what led you up to starting up a podcast?
For me, I started the podcast simply because I was just listening to the audio. So I was doing podcasting way back, like 2016, where it was just pretty much popular to do it just audio. I was listening to podcasts like Taxstone, Charlamagne had his little podcast at the time. Joe Budden. So, you know, growing up in Baltimore is like, you either have the radio on or you're just playing music. So it just pretty much started from there, me working at a hotel, uh, talking shit to people at work and, just doing barbershop talk, covering like current events, music, debating music, which I do a lot. Um, Probably not as much as I used to, but yeah, that's where it pretty much started from. It's just me just doing a podcast and just saying, all right, I think I can do this because I'm pretty like introverted and stuff like that. But once you start talking about a topic I really mess with, then yeah, that's when I start really talking about it.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to you on that. There's a lot of people as well when they find out I have a podcast, but yet a lot of people always see me being very introverted. And for me to really I gotta gel with just certain people with certain vibes, I guess you could say, like, maybe if we have an interest as far as creating music, maybe we like to talk about sports. Maybe we like to talk about, I don't know, something related to movies or just music, generally speaking. And that's how I build most of my connections. And outside of that, it's kind of really hard for me, I guess you could say, to connect with certain people. And just listening to your podcast, in fact, all the things that you said, talking about like current events, and maybe even a little bit of sports, and you kind of mix that in with, I actually watched the interview with D Skills and Black Chakra, and
Yep.
that's exactly what you did throughout that whole shout out to D Skills and Black Chakra as well. I had them on
Shout
my
out to them. Yep.
podcast as well. Um and yeah, that's just what I got from listening to your podcast. Exactly that. Now, and we also have in common, even like you mentioned, you started in 2016. I actually did like an online radio show when Blog Talk was kind of like the thing
Yep.
10, 15 years ago. And we actually stopped in 2016. And I took a couple of years off, and then the pandemic hit. And I was just like, this is a perfect time for me to get back into it. Because at that time I was working at home and I was making beats a lot, in addition to work, but I was just kind of like, I need something else to do in order to, keep the community connected and also, help me grow my network as well, because a lot of artists, might see the show and then their followers see and they might start following me and I have them on the show. So it's kind of had a reaction like that. Starting out, one of the things I always like to ask another podcaster, especially, for anybody out there that's considering starting a podcast, what are some of the, I guess you could say, things that, might have had your podcast start off kind of slow, you may not have had as many guests as you intended, or maybe you didn't have enough time. Like, what are some of the obstacles that you had to overcome starting a podcast?
My main thing was trying to figure everything out by myself and getting the right materials. So I'm looking at two of my mics right there. Was a compression mic. I had like a old, well, not old laptop, but I didn't know all the basics. Like I didn't have no interface, material, anything like that. It was just pretty much a mic. My software, which was Mixcraft 5. So I learned that back and front. Then I start saying, all right, let me see what I can do as far as taking stuff off YouTube, like viral clips, like he needs some milk, that type of stuff. So, I started there. Then I start tagging my friends along. I'm like, yo, let's just be on my first podcast. My first podcast, I had my best friend at the time, just have him on. Then the next one, I had my other friend on, and then I just start trickling from there. I already knew some rappers already. I already knew people that was doing music already, from all over the United States. Mr. High Def. From there, then he just pretty much said, "Oh, let's do a playlist," and I'm like, "Fuck is a playlist?" Because I'm just so like focused on, all right, how can I just put this out there? Then trying to get the right artwork. Didn't know how to do artwork at the time, so I had a couple. I was just reaching out to everybody. The difficult part about it is not paying attention to likes so much, because at the time I was just putting my stuff on SoundCloud. I didn't want nobody to see my face. I just wanted to say, all right, let me put this audio out because it's more therapeutic more than anything else.
Yeah.
So putting your voice out there, having people that, well, it starts off with you saying, yeah, listen to my podcast. So you just send it to people that you just looking for, you know, gratification from, if that makes sense. So, you're just looking at it from a standpoint like, all right, I'm going to send this to my cousin. I know he going to mess with it. Then it comes to the point that you like everybody's saying the same thing. But then I say, did you listen to this part that I said this in? And then it's like, yeah, yeah. And I'm like, I didn't say that in this podcast. So then you find out people lying. So then you say, all right, let me go to some strangers. So I just start putting on Twitter, things of that nature. I think most people run into the difficulties is if I put something out because my friends say I'm funny, or this goes for anything. This goes for music. This goes for being a comedian, all types of stuff, where you want to look for people that's just going to pat you on your back instead of just telling you, oh, I mess with it, but, you know, I didn't like how you stuttered or whatever the case may be. So to answer the question, yeah, the first couple podcasts it was like a high and low type of thing. And that's when I knew about the hashtags and stuff like that. At the time when I first started my first podcast, it was the Birdman situation where he came in Breakfast Club and said,
Okay.
I ain't gonna say it no more,
Mhm.
you know, and that type of thing. So that was funny. And then I just said, oh, all right, so I got like at least 90 listens to that. So after a while, that's when you start, keep on going from there. That's pretty much the struggles of first building a podcast. It's just putting yourself out there and just keeping your head down.
Yeah, a lot of times you got to really find your own formula to see what works. And
Yep.
even, especially if you're flying solo, if you don't have a co-host, um, that could be a little difficult sometimes because I can tell even going back to like some of my first podcasts until now, just how the flow of the overall podcast is much better. But I mean, also to your point, um, it not only the topic that you discuss, because the podcast originally started off, the Major Music Podcast originally started off as a podcast where I just interviewed producers, and from there we kind of got into artists, and then even like yourself got into interviewing other podcasters just to get some perspective. And I just noticed certain shows, depending on whatever we're talking about, maybe we're talking about the latest and greatest gear that came out as far as, music production, or maybe we're talking about something that happened in the industry. And, it just timing is a part of it because, you definitely want to, if something happened this week or something happened today, you probably want to capitalize and maybe not make a full podcast, but at the same time, you may want to just make like a 5 or 10 minute video on it, a current event, just to create some content. But like, you just, I think a lot of creators initially when they start out, they got to take note of what works for them and
Yep.
keep on doing more of that. That's definitely one of the biggest things whenever starting out as a creator, being, podcaster specifically. Now, on the other side of that, what would you say has probably been the most rewarding thing for you as a podcaster?
For me, my biggest reward is not chasing fame for one, but to have, like, for instance, we talk about these skills. I love these skills. Ever since like he just randomly hit me up on Twitter. He's from Baltimore, so he comes from the type of area and environment I come from. So for me, I'm not going to say I am the first person that he interviewed with, but I have others that I have interviewed. I have interviewed people from the UK, never stepped foot in the UK,
Yeah.
but they I did an interview with them and multiple ones of them. So to have that, first of all, you have that person has to trust you first of all, because there've been plenty of times where I had interviewed a musician, let's say a musician, and then all of a sudden they change their name and then they have a whole different persona and then they say, oh, I need you to take this podcast interview down. For me, that's like, damn, all right, cool. Like, damn, all right. But the most rewarding thing is like, maybe if this person pops or maybe this person gets famous, they can always come back to my podcast and say, damn, like, oh, he did a podcast with him like 5 years ago before he blew. That's the biggest thing for me because like what people do not understand is like when you go and actually interview with Hot 97, whatever the case may be, you got to be really polished. Like you can look at, for example, the Migos. The Migos was terrible at doing interviews when they first came into the industry, but after a while, they got polished and they got comfortable with people because some people don't like to talk. They want to talk about the music, and that's it. But sometimes when you're podcasting, your job is to dig deeper into, okay, you said this bar. Can you tell me about your childhood? A lot of people are like, oh, I don't want to talk about that because they so much in a persona and stuff like that. But to answer your question, I know I'm going all over the place, but um, my biggest reward is just having that first podcast for that musician, artist, or gamer, whatever the case may be. That's the biggest reward.
Yeah. I think, every time, because I've also had a lot of people that have been repeat guests on the show, but I can tell like that a lot of the relationships that I built, well, one, it's allowed me to be able to grow my channel for one, and continue to create more content because I think a lot of people have started asking, like, if I take couple of weeks off. I mean, earlier this year, I had to take off because I had surgery and I had a couple of pieces of content ready to go, but eventually it ran out. And I had people hit me up and they're like, we need more podcast episodes, or, I want to get on a podcast. And, for me, that's a rewarding thing to know that they look to you as a platform where they can go to talk about maybe they have a new project coming out, or
Yep.
maybe they're also into content creation, whatever they do. And just the fact that, you have a community of other creators, other artists, other producers even, that pay attention to what you do. And it's it's gonna continue to grow as you continue to put out more episodes. So I think whatever you put into it, you're gonna definitely get back. For me, I mean, I totally agree. That's one of the most rewarding things for me. Yeah. And your podcast now, I noticed on YouTube and SoundCloud. And how do you record again? Mixcraft?
Well, that's when I used to do the
Yeah.
audio.
Uh-huh.
Now I do just strictly Zoom. So
Oh,
I do
okay.
Zoom, and then of course I do like I use a whole bunch of editing software because I'm just trying to get better with it. So I've been using video editor when I first got on YouTube, and then I'm just start trickling down using all types of different software. So it's like one of those things where I'm trying to trickle with certain things, and maybe I can chop this interview up in this way, or think, that type of way. So as of right now, yeah, it's just pretty much Zoom, then edit.
Yeah, same here. I usually I record in Zoom and then I do the editing, cleaning up mainly at the beginning and in that kind of conversation we had before the introduction and after the ending of the show. And then I for the audio version, I actually extract the audio from the Zoom
Hmm.
once I'm done editing and I mix it in Logic and then I load it up online on anchor.com. But I may actually, start putting some of the episodes on SoundCloud, kind of like you, because that is a good avenue just to have more of the episodes because a lot of people can discover it from SoundCloud as well. How's that
Yeah, because
work for
I'm sorry for cutting you off. Sorry, my bad.
you? Oh no, go ahead.
So the thing is with SoundCloud, like people used to send me messages on there. Of course, I don't look at it unless I'm on a desktop because for some reason, for the app on SoundCloud, you can't see messages. You can see your email, of course, but yeah, I think it's a good algorithm for that because you have a lot of upcoming artists that's still putting music out there, and a lot of people are not going to put their music on Apple Music because building a profile for a musician when you're first starting, it's a lot of it's a lot of like hard work for it. So putting your stuff on SoundCloud is pretty much easy. Upload it, keep it going. Uh, if they stumble across your podcast, then they're gonna be like, oh, all right, cool. I'm gonna hit this guy up. And of course, if you have your links and all that, that's why links is important. But yeah, for the most part, yeah, yeah, SoundCloud is pretty good. I'm trying to think of another app that I was using also, but Anchor is good too. I just stopped using it after a while, but yeah, Anchor is pretty good.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and I don't know, like I noticed YouTube, they have some new I guess a feature on their
Hmm.
website where yeah, you can take the video version and they'll make an audio version of your podcast and upload it to like YouTube podcast section. I don't know if they send it to all the rest of the platforms, but at least if you have anybody out there that's looking to get a podcast out, and maybe you want to go directly through YouTube.
I think they do, but like they have YouTube Studios, and
Yeah,
YouTube Studios is pretty good to check out your numbers and things of that nature, and easy. It's easy for you to share it with Twitter and Tumblr and Reddit and all these other places.
yeah,
Um, as far as sharing it on Apple Music, um, Anchor is pretty much good for that because I have stuff on Apple and I was like, I wonder why how I get on here and Audio Mac and stuff like that. But Anchor really gets it out to everybody like real fast.
yeah. If you want to, and it's free, to upload to Anchor. So, if you're an up and coming podcaster, definitely look into Anchor. If you want to get it like on Apple Podcasts and Spotify Podcasts, and then also look into SoundCloud and of course YouTube, and then I mean Zoom. Zoom, of course, I know a lot of people that utilize like that 30-minute free option for Zoom to
Yeah.
create a podcast. And then I notice also like I do actually their base plan. I think it's
Hmm.
like $15 a month. And
Yep.
then you could also, I want to get into some live streaming at some point, but you can also utilize your Zoom into like YouTube or um I think maybe even like Twitch, uh, that you can send your Zoom feed through. And
Hmm.
I want to get into some of that as well at some point. So we'll see about that, man. We'll definitely see about that. Now, I want to kind of rewind
Hmm.
back to an earlier segment just to talk about, how did the relationship between you and D Skills start? 'Cause I know y'all both from Baltimore. Well, like you mentioned briefly how y'all met each other through Twitter, but after that, tell us a little bit about that relationship.
It's a good relationship. We're both Knicks fans.
Oh man, I'm sorry.
I
I'm
know. I know. Man, I don't even want to think about that. But yeah, it just pretty much started off of just him just sending me a message. I send I think my latest podcast before that, and we just start connecting there. He sent me a message, and then he was just like, "All right, let's do it. Let's do the podcast. Let's do it." Um, I quickly found out he was from Baltimore because we have different slangs and stuff, and it's one of those days where uh, what part of Baltimore a person's from because how they carry themselves and things of that nature. Then we start talking when we did the podcast before and after. Uh, we have a lot of people that we both love. I like MF Doom a lot. Um, he's very knowledgeable of like 90s raps. I like his like all his songs and stuff like that. So like him putting me on the his album was very big for me because I was like, all right, I thought he was bluffing at first, but when we did the podcast, he took every snip out if we're going song by song by song, and I was like, okay, cool. Um, so like I said, when you seen uh the podcast with me, him, and Black Chakra, that was pretty much us just having that relationship and just him telling me, yo, I'm about to put this next song out, this next album out. Check it out with me and Black Chakra. And I was like, okay, Liberated Scarface. I was like, cool, all right. And then it'd be other albums that didn't come out yet that he'll just, hey man, I'm gonna send you this. Tell me what you think, and I'll tell him exactly what I think. And usually he knocks it out the park before he even send it to me. So our relationship is like real good. Like we send stupid shit to each other all the time, and like I'm always excited when he puts out music. I'm just waiting for him to like blow up really, so I can be like, yeah. Once again, I think I did his first podcast. So this is one of those things where I say I can count on my hands pretty much like probably five people I keep in contact with that I didn't count this podcast as well.
Me and you both, man. I hope he do blow up. He was on my podcast and coincidentally reached out the same way. I don't know. I think at that point I might have been gone for about a year and a half or so as far as when I started the podcast over. And originally he came on by himself the first
Hmm.
time, and the
Yep.
second time he came on with Black Chakra. But both times, I mean, it was a great experience to have him on the show. And both times as well, he sent that Liberated Scarfaces the last time. Then he sent a project initially the first time. I got to go back and check, but um, and I like his music, genuinely. Like I listen to a lot of people that come on the show's music, and I just like the whole vibe of their music. They kind of, and I heard them talk about this on your podcast, in fact, but how they had a love for 90s hip hop and that kind of
Hmm.
influenced their sound today because you can hear kind of that even that Liberated Scarfaces project, and we talked
Hmm.
about that on my podcast, but had instantly like that feeling of Incarcerated Scar Faces by Raekwon. And
Hmm.
just with the production that they had on there. And I actually sent them some beats too. So, I hope we can get something going on in the near future, man. I would definitely like to work with these skills, man. Good brother. Very good brother.
Hey, very good, brother. And people also don't know that, like, when you're when you're because everything gets reincarnated. So with him being like his, when you hear his songs and he sound like he's from New York sometimes, but he's not changing. That's the most important thing, because some people will just go with what's happening now. So, he's not changing, which makes it even better because, you know, a lot of people they're so afraid of not fitting in, and it's like he's really just doing what he does the best. And I think, and also bringing his crew along too, like Trey Bloods. Black Chakra is the funniest motherfucker I
Yeah.
ever. Yeah, like the stuff that he said is like it's hilarious. I can't say it on here, but yeah,
Yeah.
uh, yeah. But like I said, like he's a good brother.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. What's the general, they talked about like what the hip hop scene was kind of like, a lot of battle rap in
Mhm.
Baltimore. Um, do you go to a lot of those shows, or what's the scene looking like?
I don't go to a lot of the shows. When I was younger, it was like you go down the Inner Harbor. If you see a crowd, somebody was battling each other. Um, for us, like the battle scene is not as big as it is now because a lot of people, you know, I don't want to sound like cliche, but it's everybody's not about getting embarrassed in front of everybody.
Yeah.
And for me, it's like if you're going to do that battle scene, you got to do it in like a building or something like that. It's not like back in the day where you had Smack DVD, things of that nature.
Yeah.
I think right now we're like we're a big crock pot of like good art. Like we have a lot of good artists here, soulful artists, and you can hear the pain in our struggles and stuff like that. But I think the one thing that when it comes to our scene is like we're gonna give you that gritty rap. And I think a lot of people do that. Of course, you're gonna hear the accent. Like you're not running from that, no matter where you go at. You can be a comedian, you can be a rapper, you can be your everyday person. I think with us, it's that we got that gritty scene, and it's just that people just overlook us. So either one, they like we're not part of DMV. So a lot of people would be like, "Oh, you're from Baltimore? All right, you from DMV?" Nah, no. We're in Maryland, but we're separate from them. So DC artists is definitely going to sound different from Baltimore artists. Virginia artists is going to sound different from Baltimore artists. But yeah, the scene is a little like just gritty. I'll say just gritty. That's what I'll say.
Yeah, I actually had another guest who also knew these skills, Nick B out of H-Town.
Hmm.
And he said he had went up to Baltimore recently, but he
Hmm.
talked about the scene in Baltimore. He went to one of the battle rap events out there, and the part of that I always found that was fascinating to me, like up Baltimore, New York, um, they have a different, it's just a different vibe. Like they have more, like you kind of say, events at buildings, as
Hmm.
to where more so like here we do a lot of events with more like in clubs and things like that. So it's just a whole different vibe, but I still think it's cool at the end of the day, just the music culture. I've learned to just respect overall hip hop culture all across the country, man, because I just think it's kind of cool. Just how I guess music fans in those cities, indie music artists and DJs even, um keep keep their music culture going. through the years. You know, you go to West Coast, you feel those West Coast vibes. You go to New York and Baltimore, like I was saying, and then you come to the South, so you got a whole different vibe. So yeah, man, I gotta make my way up to Baltimore at some point, man. Definitely. I ain't never been at
It,
that part in that part of the country.
it is it's how should I say it? It's very unique. Let me put it that way. You're going to see things that me and these skills might think is funny, but the world might think not, maybe not think it's funny. But for us, it's like these skills shared a story about a time where a crackhead came to him and said, "Look, I need $5." And if he said, "All right, if you go over that to that guy and snuff him or punch him, I give you $5." Like this is the type of stuff that I grew up on, where you know you have functioning addicts at my job, where you're supposed to be working, but they might be just you know doing drugs and doing all types of crazy stuff. So you'll see that, and then you might see history. Like it's like it's small, but it's like you're every couple blocks you'll see something different. That's all I can't really explain it. It's just Baltimore is going to be Baltimore stuff. So I
Man,
mean I can't really explain it much more. But the city is what it is. The city is what it is.
says what it is, man. I used to watch a lot of Wire, man. So I mean, uh, that kind of, I guess, I don't know if Baltimore still has a lot of that. Yeah,
I
okay,
mean,
all right.
a lot of places been torn down, but if the best place to go, like to get at least a little taste of the Wire, literally go from the city, Pennsylvania Avenue, go straight up to Park Heights. You're gonna see everything, and it's like if you coming from east to west, it's like I don't know how to explain it really, but it's like one of those things where you'll get an essence of it, because a lot of places that was on the Wire has been torn down. They're doing a lot of gentrification here, so it's like they're trying to move people closer to the county or the mid area, which is like Park Heights, Drew Hill. Like they're trying to push people out there. So you're gonna see a lot of things that you thought was on the Wire, but it's like, nah, it's not
Not the
here no more.
same. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
man. Good old Wire, man. Rest in peace, Lance Reddick, Lieutenant Daniels. So he's talking about the Wire. Passed
Yeah.
away maybe a month or two ago. So, definitely rest in peace, man. Um, who is one person maybe that you haven't interviewed yet that you would like to interview?
Wow. Um, I'll go with three decisions. For me, I would like to interview a NBA player because I have behind the scenes more questions. Um, Unsigned artists. Hmm, can't really think of one right now. Cam Cole. Cam Cole, I've been really listening to a lot. Don't know where he's from, but I just listen to all his songs. Um, and maybe if you want to go from a grand scheme type thing, would be Lloyd Banks. Lloyd Banks is my
Okay.
favorite rapper of all time. Like I know people might say, "Oh, you're not Jay." I'm like, Jay Z's cool. Don't get me wrong, but Lloyd Banks was that rapper for me where I can relate to him ever since like 2002. Like, yeah, if I got to interview him, I'll be cool. I'll be good for like I'll be good for about 5 years, where I can just keep that on my mantle and say, yeah, I interview Lloyd Banks, my favorite rapper.
Man, I hope you get that opportunity, man. I like I
Yeah.
like Lloyd Banks, man. I like Lloyd Banks. Yeah, that was I haven't listened to none of his recent stuff, but I just go back sometimes and I listen to some of those D Unit albums.
Hmm.
And I really like what they were doing back then, the whole sound that they had around that time. And
Yeah, they was flooding the market. They was flooding the market.
man, all the time, man, all the time. Man, what kind of shout outs do you have?
Um, Shout out to Not Strader from Portland, another person that threw a lot of guests my way. for sure, because there've been a lot of people from the West Coast, from places I never knew that I'll be interviewing people from. Interviewed one guy from Alaska. I'm sorry, I forgot his name. But one guy from Alaska, and
Wow.
how he explained like their summers, like, oh, summer, that's only like 1 month. I'm like, the fuck is that?
Yeah.
1 month? And I'm like, yo, you literally in the house all day. And then, he explaining, yeah, we got gangs over here. I'm like, gangs? It's fucking 19
Mm.
degrees or 19 degrees or maybe negative 19. Like, what are you saying right now? So, him telling me that. Also, shout out Mr. High Def. Another person, like I said, made a playlist for me, and then people start flooding in and say, "Yo, interview me, interview me. Come on, let's go, let's go." Um, so yeah, definitely shout out to him. Um, like I said, shout out to these skills. Uh,
Yeah.
the other person that threw plenty of people my way, and shout out to everybody that that really just share my content. That's it. That's pretty much it.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I just wanted to say, man, definitely, keep up the content, like what I saw today. Took a look at that episode I told you about, and I'm going to dig deeper and check out more of your episodes as well. And where can our listeners also follow you at?
Oh, you can follow me on Instagram, Sammy Loco 22. Also, Sammy Loco Podcast. Also on Instagram, YouTube. It's the same, Sammy Loco 22. Uh, Always on Instagram for whatever reason, putting a whole bunch of crazy things up as always. Like I said, I took a break because I had a couple deaths in the family and stuff like that. So it's one of those things where I'm going to definitely get back to it. You can always reach me out on Instagram. I'm always there, always ready to interview. The only thing I ask people to do, if you're going to be somewhere, be there. Don't cancel. Don't
Oh
say, oh, let's
man.
do another time. That shit irks the shit out of me. So
Yeah.
if you're going to be there, just like you'll do for a Hot 97, I always say this, for a Hot 97 or a Breakfast Club, whatever the case may be, just be there. Be present, you know. Yeah.
Man, that's one of the biggest things that my own personal pet peeve is, one time I get something might come up last minute, one time. But
Yeah.
if you do it twice, no, you wasting my time at that point. You go to the back of the line. I might
Yeah.
decide
You ain't
I,
lying. Preach.
I might decide, when if I'll have them back on at any time. But yeah, man, they gotta stop with that.
Yeah, it's all about respect too. So most of the times some people don't have respect for your platform. And then on top of that, to add more insult to it, it's like, oh well, you don't have enough views. So it's one of those things is as I learned from these skills also, it's always good to connect. No matter how big or small the platform is, you never know. You
Yep.
never know. You don't want to be that person that, oh, I pass up on that podcast, then all of a sudden that podcast get big and you never know who knows who. So it's always good to keep that relationship bridge open at all times.
Yeah, and that artist could blow up and, you know, maybe they have some exclusive information that
Yep.
they won't break anywhere else but your podcast. So, you never know if they have an opportunity like that. So definitely, man. Y'all can follow me on Instagram at D._major music. Same thing on TikTok, on Twitter, D.mme, and check out new episodes of the Major Music Lounge podcast, not only on YouTube, but also all podcast streaming platforms. Appreciate Sammy for stopping by and for the great chat. Go ahead, check out the Sammy Loco podcast, just like he was saying on YouTube. And it's been another episode of the Major Music Lounge podcast, and we are out.
Major Music.